Last time we spoke about the inyan of Gilgulim. Gilgulim, we opened up a petach, we spoke about a few of the ideas behind the Gilgulim. I just want to recap what we ended up the last shir with last time. Bezrat Hashem. Okay? And from there we'll speak about a little bit of a couple practical ideas which we can take away with this instead of being only abstract, okay? Of being only abstract. Seder? We mentioned that there's really three different types of Gilgulim, okay? Three different types of Gilgulim. One that goes when a person is the Neshama himself. That was the first type. We said when a person is born with a Neshama, so that Neshama could be a Gilgul of a previous Neshama. So a person totally doesn't feel it. It's automatically within the person. It's the same Neshama. The Neshama that you have, that's the Gilgul of a previous Neshama.
Of his own.
Of his own. It's his own neshama, and that's what. No. Someone else's neshama that came back, but that's your neshama. There's not two. It's not two. The second type we said that's when when a person's conceived. When a person is almost born, a child, a fetus is about to be born. There could be another neshama that latches onto him, kind of like clings onto him. That's called soda ibur. Soda ibur means it has his own neshama, and then there's another neshama which is a gilgul of something else that automatically latches on to that person. Okay, to that person, that latches onto that person, and that could be something that can be good or bad. Meaning, if you got a neshama of a Tzadik, so it can end up being good for you. It can help you do things and have. So sometimes you see a person who naturally has inclinations to do the right things that can come from this type of ibur. Or you have a person who has natural inclinations to do bad things, something that we would say about a person, he's possessed, right? Sometimes some people say that about their spouses, right? They're possessed. I just know what got into her, right? So that came from Soda Ibur, you understand? So now she has an excuse, and now there should be no more Shalom Bayit problems, okay? That should be. Okay? It came from a thing that, from within another neshama, which could be on a little bit of a lower level. I have to, someone who speaks Hebrew, do you mind just telling me I'll be a little lower in the corner? I'm not going to... It gets the person into a certain mode where he becomes a little bit more of a, let's say, a bad person or a little bit of a negativity. The third one, which is what we're also familiar with, is what we call dibukim or ruchot refaim. Okay, these we might bring some stories, not today, but in the future, about these types of things which occur. Okay, and that happens in a proper adult, a person who's 20 years old, 30, 40, a person adult. Fully thing, he becomes possessed. It can happen through an accident by just being next to being in the wrong place in the wrong time. A ruach was running away. Usually the reason why a dibuk will be medaber is not for a tikun, right? The first two are there to be metaken himself, to finish up a job. You understand? He was not so good, he needs to finish himself up. The third one, a dibuk, usually they're doing it because they're trying to run away from their problems, okay? It means almost 90, and I think 100% of the time it was a bad person, it was a rasha, and he's getting smashed by the Malachei Kabbalah, and he doesn't know where to run, where to hide, and he has only one. You remember when you used to play a tag, right? And you always have your safe, you can hold on to here and you're safe, right? If you hold on to the ball, then you go and you run behind the guy so he won't tag you and you hold on to the ball, I'm safe now, right? That's what happens with a dibuk. You understand? When he's possessed inside of a body, the Malachei Kabbalah can't get to him. They can't get to him. This is written in the Minchat Yehuda, the Review of Fatay brings us. He can't be touched.
Hashem controls that?
Hashem worked it out that way. Why is
this guy's fault?
Because now I'm in a body of a Tzadik, but he doesn't deserve to get the Malachei Kabbalah. In other words, the dibuk deserves to be bashed, right? Things we spoke about in the previous shurim about what happens to a person through the Malachei Kabbalah. He deserves to get something. But when he's in someone else's body, Ki'ilu, they can't get to him. You know, what are they going to do? Hit the person? What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. Why do I deserve this? So Kebiyachol, he's in safe. He's in safe.
Why is he fault? The guy that got it.
Right. Why is he in fault? You'll see from the stories, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's it. There was one story, I think I mentioned the other line, just one story, not long ago. The girl, she was a 17-year-old girl, and she was in the stall with the horses at the wrong time, and the horse died and there was a dibuk inside of that horse, and he had to find himself away because he was out of the horse. He was in a horse, and he was trying to find himself in. The Malachei Kabbalah, they're on their way. So he saw this girl, and boom, he jumped in her, and that's it. And She was possessed until they were able to get rid of him. Okay, that's how it works. Okay. Now, if you're asking what's fair and not fair, is it fair, and then these types of things were said, it could be part of his kapara, that type of thing. But the al-kaparim, a dibuk is a little bit of a difference from a classic gilgul, because the two first gilgulim are there to get kaparat. And I've shown that the dibuk a lot of times is there to protect himself, and that's why when the Chafetz Chaim will come, and we'll see the story of the Chafetz Chaim also, and the Rav Chanan, when they try to get rid of the dibuk, he mamish resists. He's not interested because you know what I'm in for? You pull me out of this person's body, I'm in big trouble, right? He's mamish scared to leave the body. He's lo munyan po, right? He's running away to be able to do it. So they scream and they're very vulgar. I don't know if you've ever understood. They say a lot of curse words and they can mamish bidin, and everybody's closing their ears, and it's not matim and all that, because we're talking about neshamot shvelot. We're talking about low lives, as they say, that had this dargah of a situation. Al kaparim, these are the three types of Gilgulim that happens. Now, one other nekuda, mention a couple nekuda, and we'll see how to apply this a little bit practically to us, if I can. Okay? One other nekuda is it doesn't always go straight to a person. Okay? A Gilgul doesn't always happen to a meaning. As we all know, the world is made up of Domem, Tzomeach, Medaber. We all know we're made up of 4 elements. Okay? Even in a table, you can have, this table could have a Gilgul right here, having a kapara right now. It doesn't matter. It can happen in a chai, in an animal. I just told you the story about the horse. And it can be in a Tzomeach. Now here in Shar Gilgulim, he brings the Arizal. Again, it's not so abstract. I'm just trying to bring out some practicalities, and then we'll be able to speak out how we can apply this to us. In Shar Gilgulim, he actually speaks out an interesting phenomenon. He says the way to be metaken each one of these 4 things has a specific time. There's a time for each one. You can't be metaken it only within a certain time period. A domem, meaning if inside this table there's a gilgul, it can only be metukan between Av and Cheshvan. From Av, Tisha B'Av, now just right now, finishing up right now. Right now we're in Domem time. Right now we're in Domem time. If you want to be metaken the Domem, then it's only between Av and Cheshvan. Those are the 4 months in the year that it works. Okay? That's the 4 months in the year. The tzmachim is from Nisan. It works from Nisan until Tammuz, until Tammuz. You understand? And the Chai is from Kislev next month until Adar. If he misses those months, it's not going to work until next time. Okay, now let me explain to you why what do I mean by miss? Let me tell you a good example of this, so to make it practical, so I don't sound abstract, right? I said, when is the time for Tzomeach, for plants? How can you be metaken the plants? I said the time period was between Nisan, right? Between Nisan and Tammuz, which is a 4-month period. Why is that special? Why is that? That's very noteworthy, because what do we do in the beginning of Nisan? Birkat HaIlanot. Why do we do Birkat HaIlanot? So simply speaking, you open Shulchan Aruch, Reish Chaf Hey, you open it up, we do Birkat HaIlanot to do Birkat HaIlanot, because there's a mitzvah to appreciate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But al pisah, there's a big Indian behind it. We do Birkat HaIlanot because we're supposed to appreciate the fact that there are Gilgulim inside of the trees. Many trees of Gilgulim inside of them that are trapped inside of them, and they want to get out. So when we go and make a bracha on the tree that is beginning to flourish, so then we are being mitaken the Gilgul that's within it, and they're very appreciative. That's why the Kaf HaChaim speaks about this in a Richut, L'Halakha. That's why there's a certain advantage to go and find more than one tree. We actually have at least 2 or 3 trees. Sfardim are even more makpid about this, to go out into a field, into the orchard, because over there is more Gilgulim are found outside in the fields, and to try to get as many trees as you can, because you get to do as many in one shot as possible, because you tried to be mitaken the trees. You follow?
When a Neshama comes to a tree or whatever, why is that? What Tikun is the Neshama doing?
He's there because he didn't finish. The start of the Gilgul we spoke about last week is he does Ulo Gamar, the previous Gilgul, and he had a little bit more to do. So he has to come back to the tree, and then from the tree he's going to go to the Chai, from the Chai to the Medaber, and hopefully then he gets to go to Olam Haba. But he doesn't have the schut to get cleaned in Gehenna, because he still needs a little bit more tikkunim. And sometimes, some people are lucky enough, if they need a little bit, they go straight to a Medaber, they go straight to a person. But some people need a lot more, so they go to a cat, right? Outside they go to a cat. The cat will come in the base midrash and make all the problems over here, and then, right?
What kind of tikkun can we make?
So you see in a second how you can get up, right? So what I'm saying right now, so far we saw one tikkun, but I'm going to show you in a second something else. Right? That when we go and make a bracha on the tree, when we show an appreciation to Hashem from the tree, we're metaken the Gilgul in the tree, and he moves up to Shlav Bet. He gets to move up to be a chai, or maybe even a Medaber. He's able to go up. You understand? By us making a bracha on the tree, that's the advantage. Okay?
It's not going to be a Tzomeach and that's it.
No, he didn't say a Tzomeach, a Tzemach, right? No, he didn't say like that. In Hebrew, they say a vegetable is a Tzemach. A person becomes a vegetable. So the person didn't say a vegetable. No, he moves up. Yeah, you understand? He moves up to Shlav Bet when you're able to. By the way, that's also one of the questions. It's a big question, Halacha. If you miss Nisan, if you don't make Birkat Eilonot in Nisan, can you make it in Iyar? Can you make it the next month? Right? So I'll be what we're seeing over here. The Tikkun's not so bad. Really, it's in Nisan the main time. But Iyar until Tammuz, you're still good. Now, Al-Pi Pshat, you can't do it in Tammuz. It's already a little bit late. Because anyways, there are fruits. But Al-Pi Sod, you really are allowed to do it a little bit later. That's why we say the whole Nusach. So Ashkenazim just say the bracha. Sfaradim, if you look in the Siddur, you open the Siddur, there's a whole tikkun on what we're doing, and it's a tikkun for us, and a tikkun for the Gilgulim. We write about the Gilgulim in there. That's what we're writing about, because of the same.
Many people say the bracha on the same tree. What is that? It's not really helping.
Right, good question. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. I saw some tikkun that needed to be done here, so I had to take care of that. Anyway, sorry, that's why I interrupted you. But it is true, and you should know there is a certain mila to get as many trees as you can. It's good to branch out, but if you don't have a choice, then there's still a mitzvah, Al-Pi Pshat. But Al-Pi Sod, there is an Indian to try to...
Everyone should take their own tree.
Take their own tree, that's it, there you go, very
So
good.
the tree next to the shul is a very lucky Gilgul.
The tree in the shul, yeah. He planted himself in the right place.
Comes back as a tzaddik.
Okay, that's one nekuda. But I want to tell you something very interesting. The Minchat Yehuda in Parshat Ekev, that's Rabbi Yehuda Fataya, he speaks about this, and he says a wild thing. Before I saw him write this, I would have never guessed someone could say such a thing, but he's a big man, and he says this. He says everything I just told you is absolute hogwash. He says it's all a bunch of baloney. And I told you it's brought in the Kaf HaChaim. He brings only Rizal. I don't know. He just says it's not true. That's not what he meant. He changes the whole thing. Why does he say that? He says if that's true, he has a very simple question. I told you the tikkun for Chai, that's the tikkun for Tzomeach. The tikkun for Chai is starting next month until Adar. From Kislev until Adar. So he says we should all go to a bunch of sheep next month and we start making brachot on all the sheep. Why don't we say, what happened? Oh, the Tzomeach. That's what we first saw. Second of all, we know the halacha is that it's only when the flowers start abrupting. If it's before you start seeing a fruit abrupting, you're not supposed to. If there's already fruit, you're not allowed to. He says, why not? If you could do it, you could do it. Why not? If you can already do it, you should be able to do it. Is it disturbing? I'm okay with it. If it's not disturbing for you, but if it's disturbing, you can tell me.
Same thing, the same questions to the table. If we have
The table's a little harder, but you should do the same thing during those months. That's what you should do. That's his problem. Okay. Now to answer it is a little bit of a good question. Now again, there's a reason Al-Pi Pshat and Al-Pi Sod with the tzmachim, but you're right. That's what he asked. So he says be'etzem that the only way to really make a tikkun is by making a bracha. What you were asking, how do you really make a tikkun? By bracha and eating or drinking it. Like I just did this with its water. I give an example. I wanted to show you how it works. Right? You make a bracha. You make a bracha, and especially if you have kavanah. So then he says you make a proper tikkun on the ochel, and that's what it is. And believe it or not, that's what they say. He says this in the Arizal. So when you take an animal, when you eat meat, so you're ma'aleh the meat, right? An animal is supposed to be shechted and eaten, and when it gets a bracha, you're metaken it, and you bring it up one darga. And if it's a tzemach, if you're eating salad, you did him a favor. You hear from here is a rye for being healthy, because it says there's an advantage of eating a yerek or a tzemach because you jump 2 dargot. You got him to skip a darga. He went from being a vegetable to being an adam, to being a medaber. You follow what I'm saying? He skipped becoming chai. Chai is an animal. He goes straight from being a vegetable to a ben adam, and now you're being metaken the gilgul. You follow what I'm saying? And I also had the same question. How do you metaken a table? But this is what he writes here in the thing. I understand. He says when a person sometimes eats something like afar, he says the word afar. We don't eat afar. I don't know exactly what it is, but apparently sometimes you consume something that's a little bit what we would call a domem, so that also works. Which I don't.
The cake tastes like sawdust.
There's a good example. Okay, I won't tell your wife you said that. But say that.
according to the table, the Neshama is the worst tikkun.
The Neshama is?
When it goes into the table,
It's bad. It's very bad. You should know. Always the lowest ones. Yeah, so again, without the Minchat Yehuda, what I would have told you is right now we're learning around the table, it's a Tikun, okay? He himself says, by the way, he says even if that, he said, B'Torah mitzvot, end of our omed lefanav. He says, Torah mitzvot is metaken the netzitzot, it motzi the klipot. It takes the klipot out of the things and it's able to, so Torah mitzvot does help. So it could be that by us standing around here, around this table, we're being metaken. By now it's already very mitukan. It's in a makom shel kedusha. Yeah? But that's why, by the way, that's why sometimes the shir is back there, sometimes the shir back here. Next week it's going to be down here, okay? So, right? We try to make sure to be mitaken all the aspects. But so I think even he would agree that Torah mitzvot dafka does help, okay? Seder, you got it? Okay, that's how it is. Okay, that's the way these things work, and that's how it is. So maybe go tell him instead. Yeah. If you want, tell him nicely. Just tell him if you could just be a little bit quiet. He's learning by himself, so that's why it'd be an advantage.
Why would you need Birkat Ilanot if you're going to make a appropriate tree?
Why do you need what?
Why would you need Birkat Ilanot?
Oh, who says you're going to make a Birkat Ilanot? You don't know. First of all, you don't always do it. You do it on the fruit. You don't do it on the tree. But you're right. You don't always. It's not always. People don't always do it. Sometimes they don't have fruit or whatever. It doesn't produce on it. We're talking about it's an advantage. It's on the tree. Okay, so he brings, just so you know, Rabbi Yehuda Fatai brings a Maisa to bring out this idea, by the way. He brings a Maisa with a woman who was in a Rechaim. She was in a mill. She was she was doing that. In the olden days, they used to work, not like us. She was actually filtering through all the, they had to work hard, I'm saying. She was in the flour. She spent 12 hours in the thing, filtering through all the flour, going through each one, and sieving it or whatever she was. And she found inside of the flour, she found a date, a tamar. She found a date and she made a bracha on it and she ate it. Okay? About an hour later, she started dozing off. Like I said, she was working long hours. In the middle, she dozed off and she had a dream. She had a dream. An old man came to her. This is brought down. Ben Chachuda brings this story. An old man came to her. And he told her, I appreciate what you did. Thank you very much. You didn't do a great job. He told, you didn't do it. You didn't help me so much, but you helped me. Thank you for helping me. And he gave her a thank you, and that's it. And then she woke up. She didn't know what the heck is this guy talking about? Who is this guy? She didn't know what he is. She didn't recognize him for her life or her. So she went to Rabbi Yehuda Fataya. Baruch Hashem, he was around. So she went to Rabbi Yehuda Fataya, and she told him. So he said, "What were you doing? Did you eat something when you were in the mill?" He guessed to the story. Kilo, he said, "You were when you were filming." She said, "Yeah, I remember I had a date." And he said, "You made a bracha?" "Yeah, I made a bracha on the date." He said, "Did you make the right bracha?" She said, "Yeah, I made the right bracha on the date. I make a brei pri adama, right? That's what you're supposed to make." This is women in Baghdad. Calm down. I said, "I'm not supposed to make a brei pri adama." Now we know lahalacha brei pri adama you're yotzeh, yeah, b'di'evid, right? That's a Reish Vav. It's a Reish Vav. You're yotzeh b'di'evid on a date with a brei pri adama, but l'maisa it's not lechatchila. So he said, "Oh, that's what happened. He told you were metaken me. You didn't make a bracha levatala. You made a bracha, but yishkoyach. You didn't make the right bracha. It didn't do so. So he gave me a half a tikun." So I'm saying, I don't know if he had to go to another date or he moved up to the horse. I'm not sure exactly what happened afterwards, but he got some type of tikun. So Kavod, we see from here that as the Ben Ish Chai writes, "Lo ala lechem yichye adam," right? No, we don't ki al kol motza pi. It's what you come out of your mouth. It's the brachot you make. That's how do you mechayeh? How you mechayeh metim? How do you help a gilgul? Right? It's based on what you say. That's how a person is able to survive. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, that is this yesod that we call Gilgulim a little bit. This idea of understanding. I'm going to mention one point, and then I want to bring out a very important idea. Now, I just want to mention, very in Kitzer, there is a machloket here. Something that, not one of these machloketim that you read about in the Gemara, but it is good to know. If you look in the different mefarshim, what is mitukan by the Gilgul? What becomes mitukan by the Gilgul? Now, if you remember, we mentioned that there's a nefesh, ruach, neshama, and now the nefesh is almost the physical part of the body. Even an animal can have a nefesh. That's what makes him alive. That's what makes him different from the table in front of me. He has a lifeline. Adam hu nefesh. Anything that's alive has a nefesh. Neshama is much more that's the chut amarich po. That's the spiritual connector between us and Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So a neshama, the spirit, that becomes megulgal. That becomes recycled. Everyone agrees to that. That's pashut. Okay. The question is, does the nefesh also become redone? Does the nefesh also, or does that go with the person? Does that die with the person? Okay. The Vilna Gaon on the Tikun Zohar, he writes הנשמה מתגלגלת ולא הנפש. שכל גוף יש לו את הנפש שלו, ואם נתקלקל, כאילו, and once the person's מקולקל, once he's broken, once he does the wrong thing, the nefesh goes with him. He goes, it disappears with him. Whatever happens to him. The Vilna Gaon has a pirush on Yonah, Sefer Yonah, an absolutely beautiful pirush. He explains the whole Yonah is almost a mashal to the goof of the nefesh. Kebiyachol, the oniyah is the goof, and there's the water, and Yonah was the neshama, and he was running away, and he was trying to run away from the goof, and he has a whole understanding. So he's thrown into the water, which is the olam. He was thrown into olam hazeh, he had to drown in this world. He has a beautiful pirush and the whole idea of Yonah. It's a shir in itself. It's a beautiful concept. I one time spoke about it on Yom Kippur itself, before the reading of Yonah. But anyways, over there he writes these words. When he writes over there, he says the nefesh and the ruach yabed. He says the nefesh will be nabed lenetzach shel rasha. V'rak neshama yitaken. Only the neshama is the koach to be metukan. That's the sheet of the Gaon. But if you open up a Magid Misharim, you know what the Sefer Magid Misharim is? Magid Misharim was the Beit Yosef, Maran, a Beit Yosef, yeah? Rav Yosef Cairo. Everybody wonders how he was able to write so much in his lifetime. He was a crazy amount that he's written between the Shulchan Aruch, the Kesef Mishnah, and the Beit Yosef, just writing the physical words, and besides the fact that there's so much information in there. So the answer is he had a malach that was by him. If you go to Tzfat, they know the room that he learned in, and they say, this is the room they learned with Kanireh, this is the place where the malach was sitting next to him also. So I was trying to find the malach, he wasn't there in the meantime, I guess he left. But there is a place where if you want to go, it's locked. It used to be open, but because people are not treating it right, so that it's locked. But you can get the key to look inside. It's underneath the shul of the Beit Yosef. And there's a sefer written, the Magid Mesharim, which is a lot of things the Magid, the Malach, told the Beit Yosef. And one of the things was, he says, not like the Vilna Gaon. He didn't write those words, but he says, not like the Vilna Gaon. He says, the Nefesh and the Neshama go, and they're also mitgalgel. Meaning, even in a rasha, not only is the neshama is mitgalgel, but you should know also the nefesh gets and is able to be mitgalgel, and it's able to go again and again. But he adds one important thing. This is in the Vilna Gaon now. I go back to the Vilna Gaon. One important point I want to mention to you. Listen to this. He says a neshama can only be mitgalgel a certain amount of times. It can only be after a certain amount of times. It's too much, and if it goes back again, it won't be good for the neshama. It doesn't fix it up. It doesn't get recycled. Why? Because the more, it's kind of like when you have an old car. You understand? Like an old car, the more years you have, for those of us living in Israel, I think most of us can relate to this. The more years you live with it, you start hearing more bangs and booms, and you have to get more mechanics and this. So the neshama, once it gets recycled a certain amount of times, it becomes too exposed, too weak to the sitra achra. The sitra achra, the satan, if you want, can get more of its klipot on top of it, and it's not so good, which is very interesting because we are 100% all Gilgulim right now, okay? Everybody by us, already a couple hundred years ago, Arizal already said we're already almost all Gilgulim, so for sure by us, okay? We all have this, so the more, we're already the final recycling of the Gilgulim, okay? And therefore, because of that, that's a good explanation of what we call Yiridat Dorot, the lowing of the Dorot. Why? We wonder, why are we in such a low darga? Why are we in such a bad place? But the answer is because we're so exposed to the Sitra Achra, we're so exposed to the extras that it's not good, so therefore we're in more peril, we're in more danger. You understand what I'm saying? We're more exposed to the bad elements, and that's why so many bad things can happen to us. It's a good excuse maybe also, right? But at the same time, you should know that this is where it comes from. It comes, and it's a very good explanation, because we're already sofa gilgulim. We're at the end. It's one thing, but like I said, like a used car, it always needs to be rehabbed, and there's always more problems with it. So we're already at the final end of doing it. So that's why it happens. You understand? Which is already what I'm going to move on to the next subject. I'm getting to 1 second, which already explained to you a little bit about what we're going to talk about: special children, autism, and people and children dying young, and all these types of things that comes from this phenomenon. Yeah, Eliel, can you go home, sweetie? Go home. You would take home.
What's the difference between a nefesh and neshama?
A nefesh and neshama?
Yeah, what we're saying, the one's.
Oh, you're asking nafkamina? Yeah, nafkamina is hard for me to know 100%, but when we were speaking about death, we did speak of that there is a nefesh that connects to the dead person. And apparently that there's some type of difference if the nefesh is still there by the person, even by the kever, even afterwards, or whatever it is. Okay? Seder? Understand what I'm saying? There is such a thing. But you're right, I don't have a clear enough coming 100% what the difference is.
Gilgulim, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'll tell you later a story, but there are sometimes stories of people that remember. I heard a recording of someone recording it over, so it wasn't, he was telling one person, the guy secretly recorded, it wasn't so nice, but I heard the recording. I'm just saying, I'm proving he wasn't doing it in public to show off, in a private thing, and he mamish remembered everything. He remembered his...
Here in general, no one remembers.
Right, most of us don't remember,
We don't know what is the Tikun.
Right. Oh, how do you know? Also, David asked that last week. That I'm going to get to. I wanted to get to it this week, and that was borderline, but I'm going to get to that also. How you know what Tikun you're supposed to do? Bezrat Hashem, we're going to get to that. You'll see.
If we remember, then it's easier to metaken.
For sure.
We don't remember.
For sure. But there's simanim to know what the Tikun is. Okay, and that I'm going to speak about. Bezrat Hashem. Okay, I'm going to speak about right now about autistic kids and all these types of things. After that, I'm going to speak about how we know what to be metaken. Okay, we'll see if we get to both. I'm not sure, but at least we'll try piece by piece. Okay. Now, everyone always asks the questions about kamuvan little kids that die. It doesn't make any sense how a little child, especially a tinok, until bar mitzvah, no one's chayiv in mitzvot, right? And mita b'dei shabbat is on 20 even, right? Mita b'dei adam is on 13. So why do these tragedies occur? So okay, so we blame the parents always. That's always what we do. Okay. I mean, under the cover, you don't blame the parents directly, chas v'shalom, right? But it's not always accurate. That's not always an accurate assessment. And chas v'shalom, you're not allowed to do those things. That's first of all. And second of all, we want to also explain this idea that we know about special children, autistic children, or people who have Down syndrome, which, if we've noticed, is incredibly rampant in our door, probably much more than any other generation. It's incredible how many. So we haven't. Okay, so people say it's because we're, what do you call it? Taking shots. What do they call it? Right? Immunizations, yeah. People say it's because of immunizations, or because of what? Dori Sharim, or radiation, or all these types of things. Dori Sharim, I don't think so. But, yeah. Everyone tries to blame it, but when we look into the spiritual aspect, we know the real answer. So here I just want to explain a couple things that are mentioned, okay? Okay. They bring from a Mordechai Schwab like this. Mordechai Schwab said, a nefel, someone who is a nefel, is someone who has a stillborn or a miscarriage. He says it's a neshama achi gavoa sheyesh, the highest neshama that there is. Shetiknu akol v'zeh v'day Gilgul acharon, and that was the final Gilgul, and that was the finishing touches. Meaning, when he's mamish at the end, so that's the end. You understand? And since he's finished, so therefore, or he might die early, okay, very early, because there was just a little bit of a tikkun to do, and that little tikkun was done, and that's it. And Rav Moshe has a tshuva. Believe it or not, it's not typical Rav Moshe have a tshuva like this. Rav Moshe has a tshuva. If you want to look it up in Gimel Kuf Lamed Chet. Mefurash, that someone asked him, does a nefel get tchiyat hametim? Does a nefel also get tchiyat hametim? Does a woman has a miscarriage, does a baby also get tchiyat hametim? So he quotes the Gemara in Sanhedrin that brings that when does a person become a katan? When are you considered a person? And he says, we paskin like the Manda Amar, that from the time of conception, from the time that it's a fetus, from the beginning, it's already considered from klitat zera. That's what it says. V'lo me'et leida. So that's the time that it becomes a child. And therefore he says, even if there's a hapala, he still gets Olam Haba. And he gets tchiyat meitim. He gets both of them. Okay, ublitzar. He writes in the end of the tshuva. Obviously, the reason was that it was a brother, meaning his mother. This happened to his mother. So the brother was writing to him. He writes the bachur chashuv. He was writing to a bachur, a younger brother, that the brother wanted to know, am I going to be able to see my brother that my mother had a miscarriage? So he said yes, but he says you don't worry about those stuff in the next world. You worry about your Torah mitzvot. You take care of these things, and that's where the real oneg you will get. Okay, that's what he says. Okay, that's the Mamuez. Okay, we're in Mamuez Chaisar right now, but Mamuez in Parshat Emor brings from the Arizal. He brings from the Arizal that he says. He brings a story. The Mamoez brings a story that there was a maaseh with a certain poor person who lived in Tzfas and he needed some money. So what do you do when you live in Eretz Yisrael? We go to Chutz Aretz. Now back then it wasn't so easy. He took his horse and buggy and he went down to Mitzrayim. He went down to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, to be able to see if he can get some money. But it's a little bit hard to get money. So what do? You get hamlatzah from the Rav. Now if you get hamlatzah from the Arizal, especially nowadays, you'd be in good shape, right? You get a lot of money. So he went with the Hamlatzah from the Arizal, who wrote about he's a good guy and this, and the Arizal told him, and when you go, you should know that you're going to find your shidduch over there also when you go down there. Okay, if I find my shidduch, he's going to say, hey, I don't mind. He didn't know what the Arizal meant. Lamaisa, he went down there with the Hamlatzah. He did nicely, Baruch Hashem, he did decently, but even more importantly, I guess because of the Hamlatzah, one of the Gvirim, one of the rich people that were down there, offered him his daughter in marriage, one of the very wealthy people. And he got married to this woman. And they had good shalom bayis, yes, even though she was wealthy. And at the same time, they talk about that. They dafka bring down. I saw once a ma'aseh with the Chafetz Chaim, because they always say when you marry a wealthy person, it's always dangerous because they have musagim, as they say. They have tzipiot, expectations, and they always say it's better. So one time, someone went to the Chafetz Chaim, and he came and he wanted to ask him about the shidduch. So he said, "I have a shidduch, but I want to mention that she comes from a very poor family." So he says, is there any other ma'alot that she has? Does she have any other advantages besides that one? Is that the only advantage? You have to hear everything, It's not just from one, That's the Chafetz Chaim. There's a story about the Chafetz Chaim himself, but we'll speak about it at a different time. Chafetz Chaim himself married someone very poor, even though he was the hottest item on town. He could have bought, everybody wanted him, like there was very. But he married a very poor person because he did for Kibbud Avim. For Kibbud Avim. You know the story? No? He did for Kibbud Avim because his mother was in a second marriage and he had a son. And he had a good daughter. Meaning his stepfather had a daughter. And the father was insistent that I want the Chafetz Chaim to marry my daughter. That's what it was. And this guy was poor as a penny. He didn't have any money. What? It was a stepsister. Meaning you're allowed to marry your stepsister. Now there is an idea that if you grow up together, the Gemara in Sota does bring that if you grow up together, you shouldn't. We don't pass on like that, though. If you grow up together, because it's just maritime, it doesn't look good. But a stepsister, you're allowed to. You're not related. No relation at all. So in the end of the day, his brothers were adamant, no, this is Chafetz Chaim. It wasn't Chafetz Chaim then, right? It was Tzomeach, but he had such potential. Everyone knew what he's going to be. And he said, if it's going to help my mother's shalom bayit and it's going to help my situation, he did it. And he married an extremely poor lady, and we all know that he wasn't, he lived to the penny. We all know that he had one couch, right? He didn't have that either. Right? That's it. Anyway, so why did I bring that up? So the story with the Arizal, so he went down there, he married this lady, she was very wealthy. He ended up making, he gave her a big nudunya, a big dowry. All right, that's what he gave. What it is. 3 months later, this is what's written in the story, she died. The lady died. But guess what? Because she died, what's the rules? They went to the husband. He was yorish all her money. He was upset, it was a nice woman and this. Okay, 3 months, I guess he got over it. I don't know what to tell you. Right? But at the same time, he came back to the Arizal and Tzvas afterwards, and he told him the whole story, what happened. This poor guy, and this what happened. I don't know what happened. So the Arizal said, I'll tell you, I knew what was going to happen. He knew the whole story. He said, you should know, in your previous Gilgul, you were hit up by your partner. He stole all your money. Thousands of, millions of dollars. You had a lot of money. By us millions, by them it was whatever it was. Whatever many rubles it was, a lot of money. And you had a partner that you were attached to for a number of months, and you were very thing, and you had a very successful business, and he ripped you off all your money, and you went off with the money. And at the end of the day, it was a proper Gilgul. This woman was the Gilgul of your partner from the previous thing. You understand? She was a Gilgul of them. So her Tikun, he came back as a woman. So here you have a right, she can come back as a woman. We're going to speak about that. But her Tikun, or his Tikun, was to come back in this woman, to marry you, to give you all that money back, and then die. She did her Tikun. You know what I mean? If she didn't marry you, she would have lived a few more years maybe. I don't know. Right? But that was her Tikun. It's straight from the Arizal's mouth. There's no stories made up here, yeah? Straight from the Arizal, that's the story. So we see from here this. There's Mam Loez, by the way. Mam Loez, if you're in this building, you know the Mam Loez is a good book, right? You have to rely on that. So Al Kupanim, that's this idea that a lot of times it can be a kapara for other things that occur. Now listen to this other thing, a Maisa with the Ben Ish Chai, okay, that he explained something. There's a famous Maisa. Now the idea with the name of a neshama, another name for a neshama is a pikadon. That's what it's called. A pikadon is a collateral, a deposit. A deposit is a good word, right? A deposit, right? A pikadon is a deposit. Okay, that's what it is. So the neshama, when it gets distributed into your body, this extra neshama that comes into your body, it's a deposit into the person's body. It's called a pikadon. So the Ben Ish Chai explains with this idea, Rayon, an interesting idea. He says this in Midrash and Mishlei, okay? Lamed Aleph. He says there's a famous maaseh where Rabbi Meir had two children who were really Talmidei Chachamim, and they died on Shabbat. They died on Shabbat. They had some sickness, the two of them. They died in their room on Shabbat, but Rabbi Meir did not know about it. Who did know about it? His wife, Bruria. Bruria was she was the Rebbitzin of Rebbitzins. Okay, she was a monster. Okay, there's Gemaras and Gemaras about who Bruria was. She was very big. Anyways, so she covered up their bodies. She closed the door, and Rameir asked, "Where are the boys?" She said, "They're in the Beit Midrash. They're in the Beit Midrash." That's what she told him. She didn't want to tell him it's Shabbat. You don't tell them on Shabbat. Motzei Shabbat come, he did Havdalah. Where are the boys? So she said, "I want to ask you one question just before I go get the boys. I just want to ask you one question. When someone deposits by you a pikadon, a deposit, and then they say, I have to take it back, though. It's time for me to take it back. It's time to back. Do you have to give it back to them, or I can keep it now?" What do you mean? The halakha is, you don't need Rameir to paskin for you, but Rameir says the halakha is a person gives you deposit for a certain amount of time. You have to give it back. So she took him upstairs, she showed him the two boys, and she said they were niftar on Shabbat, and they were deposits. That's the simple understanding. I'll peep shout. We understand she was telling that Hashem gave it to him as a deposit. But the Ben Ish Chai explains what that means is they had a pikadon, because a Gilgul is called a pikadon. They were a Gilgul of someone else. They finished their tachlit. They did their tachlit. Like we said, little children also sometimes are at niftar. Only because they're a Gilgul. She said the pikadon was over. They had a pikadon which was a Gilgul. Even Bruria, not even, but Bruria knew about Gilgulim. And she gave him, and it said Nichamtani. He said that was Menachemim. He cried. Like the Midrash says over there, of course he cried. But it was a nechama to him to know, okay, it was a Gilgul that came to its Tikun, so at least I know that they're in a good place. Adon kol Neshamot. That's what it means, Adon kol Neshamot, he says. Okay, but it's a tefillah that we say that we know that he knows the cheshbon of each and, we don't know the Seder, we don't know what, El Amuna Ein Avel. We all know that the Kadosh Baruch Hu does things keseder. Everyone knows the famous mashal of the Chofetz Chaim. A person walks into the shul and he sees people getting aliyot, and he doesn't know why is this guy getting, why isn't the Rav getting, why is this guy getting, who's the first one? The answer is if you're there every week, then you'll know. It depends what shul you're in. But if you're in every week, then hopefully you'll know the answers. But if you're just come in and you just see a little piece in the puzzle, you don't know what's going on. You can't see. And that's how we are. We don't know the differences. But I am pointing out here, that is a big reason why we find in our generation, which we're in the end of the Gilgulim. I told you one reason already. In the end of the Gilgulim, that's why we're in such a low spiritual level. We're in a low ruchani level because where the Sitra Achra has a tremendous amount of koach now. Right? They always explain it similar to the end of a war. Before the end of the war, everyone fights fair. But when a person knows he's losing, he's mamish at the end. Right? When Germany was at the end, they went meshuggah. They did everything they could to do. They would throw everything again. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. They didn't have Einstein. They left him in America, who discovered the atomic bomb. But people don't realize the chesed she'ein kamo. Einstein was a German scientist. If he stayed in Germany and gave them the atomic bomb, mamish a matter of minutes, a matter of a year. But the other mile is he was Jewish. And because he was Jewish, they trashed his house, they killed his family and everything. He stayed in America. I'm going to go back to that Meshuggah. A bunch of Meshuggahs, they're idiots. But if they didn't realize, if they supported him, he would have came back and given them the atomic bomb. And then I don't even want to discuss what would have happened if the Nazis got the atomic bomb. Rahman al-Litzan. So Baruch Hashem, we had it, and that ended the war. And America meant. Right? I'm not American. Right? The Americans had it, and that ended up ending up the war because of it. Kadosh Baruch Hu has a siyata d'shmaya and kamo. At the end of a war, people throw their last everything. If I know I'm going to lose, they throw their last thing. That's what the Sitra Achra is doing. The Satan is doing in order to be mekatreg. That's their end of Neshama. And second of all, we find a lot of pigurim, a lot of problems with children, etc. A lot of for this reason also that's what occurs. Okay, that's the reason why such a thing can. That's the reason why these types of things can occur. Yeah.
So basically,
yeah.
all this Abimei.
Yeah, I'm listening.
We're not in this generation. We're not Abimei, but this
Right.
is a Kabbalah for the father because it's tremendous. Like
It's also that the Yisurim is a kapara on the father, but the Gilgul is something else. It's not connected to the father always.
What's the Kabbalah for Abimei?
You know what? I have to say something. No, there is something for a mayor. There is a kapara. First of all, the Yisurim is always a kapara. Just so you know, anytime a person goes through pain, the kapara chi tova be'olam. There's no better kapara that a person goes through than going through a difficult life. When a person has a difficult thing that he goes through, it's better than almost everything. Okay, that's the top. But there is such a thing that I did hear from Rav Moshe Shapiro. He did say that Gilgulim come back for a tikkun for themselves and the sviva, for themselves and the sviva. But especially he said when it comes to these types of people, he said it's a tikkun for the the parents, for the parents. It's a big tikkun for the parents. That's his lashon. I want to see if I get the lashon exactly. I quote it, but it's a tikkun for the parents in addition to the thing, right? It's very much a tikkun for them in addition to the thing. Very much, yeah. Listen to this nechama that Moshe one time gave to a family. Okay, there was a family that lost a child at a very young age, a couple years old. And you want to see what does the Gilgul Dor say to be menachem such a situation? So it says like this: the Midrash brings in Kohelet that just like we know a father can get problems from a child, meaning if you have a child chas v'shalom that's off the derech or things like that, we mentioned, if you remember in the Ganim stories, that can lead to an issue sometimes with the father, lo aleinu, it can make a thing. But also kal v'chomer, that's for prunia, that's for bad. So kal v'chomer for good things, that a father gets chutim from his son if he's able to raise a child who's in a good shape or a talmid chacham or in the right way, then he gets chutim from such a phenomenon. That's the opposite. You understand? That's what it says. For pruning, so for sure for schutim it's such a thing. So Moshe told his family that they said every tinok, every child that dies at a very young age, it comes, he has a straight ticket, a one-way ticket to Olam Haba. That's it. He was obviously a Gilgul that came and finished Gilgul. He goes straight to Olam Haba. There was no reason, he didn't do anything wrong. He was a pure soul that just had to finish the Tikun, so he goes straight to Olam Haba. And guess what? When a little child is up there, he says, I need my mommy and my papi, right? I need my daddy. I can't live here by myself. He pulls you in with him. You understand? He's able to pull the parents in with the child, so it's a tremendous schut in order to be able to so he gets a free ticket to Olam Haba. It's a tremendous schut. Chas v'shalom should never be relevant for all of any of us, but he actually says that's what it is. Okay, okay, that's that nakuda.
What did you mention, basically?
Midrash Kohelet. The Midrash Kohelet says, Mefurash, that Av Zochel Olam Haba V'ur Banim, meaning that. And then with the other piece that I told you, that the little children that die come from a Gilgul, it comes from a straight thing. You understand? Now there's also a Gemara in Sota Yud Bet. I just saw this recently actually. Okay, the Gemara in Sota brings a famous thing we all know. These are all ideas just to bring out this concept that I'm bringing out here. The Gemara in Sota says, we'll finish in about 5 minutes, okay? In less than 5 minutes, we'll finish. The Gemara in Sota in Yud Bet brings in Beit HaLevi, we all know the famous Maaseh that Miriam said to her father. She said, Abba, you're not having children. A Paro is killing them in Olam Hazeh. He's throwing them in the Nile. But you're killing them in Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. You're killing them in this world and the next world by not having the child in the first place. What does he mean? So Rashi over there in the Gemara says, what does it mean that you're killing them in Olam Haba? Because when a child is born, right, even if they die, they're at least a Gilgul. He didn't say the word Gilgul, but they're a Tikun for themselves, and they get a straight ticket to Olam Haba when a child dies. They go straight to Olam Haba. So at least you should have, the more Neshamot we have, the more of a Tikun it is to the world. It brings Mashiach faster, and we're finishing up the Neshamot. So you should do it. Ramatishyahu Sullivan points out an incredible thing. It's better, hear this? Can you imagine? It's better to have a child that will be thrown into the ocean than not to have a child at all. Adkan. That's what he says. It's better to have a... Why? Because at least that way... Now, it doesn't sound so pretty. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but to realize the chashivut, the importance of A, having children, or B, being able to bring more neshamot into the world, or the tikkun that a neshama is able to have. It's better to have that child, even though Rahman al-Hassan, they were thrown into the Or, they're going to be killed in a vicious way to drown them. Ugh. Despicable, right? And still, it's better to do that than to do it in any other type of way. You follow? Okay. Fine. Rav Moshe finds also is a tshuva very similar to this. Okay. And Igros Moshe also in Chelek, he also talks about the neshama shebeguf, that there's a certain advantage of actually being able to be born. He's talking about, I think, a little bit with the Tay-Sachs question, that you have the child, people wanting to abort, they know a child's going to have Tay-Sachs. Famous question. Rav Moshe was die hard. He was very upset about doing all this Tay-Sachs, and some people held that if you know 100%, every child with Tay-Sachs is 100% going to not live more than 2 years. Gag. You can't live more than at most 2 years. It's 100%. Not even a question. So if they do an avchun inside of the stomach and they know 100% that he has that the child is going to have Tay-Sachs, so many people wanted to say maybe you could do an abortion, maybe not this. Rav Moshe Feinstein was mamish die hard. He said you're over in Ritzicha, you're mamish losing your chelik in Olam Haba. He was mamish die hard about it. He said it's better to be born, let the tikkun happen to the neshama, will be born and have the tikkun, and that's it. And then we'll go to Olam Haba. Okay, that's many of the ideas here. I could bring you a number of them. They bring another Maaseh. I saw another Maaseh. Moshe Wolfson writes that when Neshama goes from the Neshamas in Kisei Kavod, he's in a great place. He comes into the stomach, and now we'll show you, he has a candle on top of him. He's learning the whole entire Torah. And if he's niftar, if he dies, then the Neshama is incredibly on a high level, because he was, this is what he says, he was on such a high, meaning a child that dies in the stomach, in Yudur. Right? It's at such a high level, he couldn't even get to Olam Hazeh. He didn't even want to be put into Olam Hazeh. He wanted to say Neshamadik. He only stayed as a Neshama. He only stayed in a very high level. And since he was on such a high level, and he says it's one of the biggest tikunim for a parent. That's an incredible. The mother was able to have this baby and to able to bring a child that went straight to Olam Haba, that stayed completely as a Neshama. And I think, so he is a Donon Kol Neshamot. He brings this idea. That's what he says. He says in Yishtabach, Borei Kol Neshamot. On such a high level, he brings all the Neshamot, even the little ones, even the ones that you can't see remain on such a high level. They're able to do. I'm just going to end with one last story, and that will finish. Okay? But you should realize the incredible levels that we're discussing with. Okay? This idea that even when a person has this, they get a certain level that people don't realize that they go straight to Olam Haba when they die at a young level. When they do this, they bring Reb Leib Gurwitz says that he said when he was Menachem Avel, he says the schut to be a shomer on such a child is a tremendous schut. And they bring a Maisa with a Chazon Ish that when a father walked in with his Down syndrome child to go ask the Chazon Ish a question, the Chazon Ish stood up Mali Komato. He didn't just stand up like this. He stood up full, all the way out of Sof. For the damn father was mamish, like taken aback, because you grew up with the child and you know what he's like. You know, he's drooling all over the place. And this is not so exciting. And still, at the same time, he was willing to do that. Let me ask one story which is brought in Rav Zilberstein, a real story from Aleinu L'Shabech in Parshat Ekev. In Tavshin Samech Gimel, we'll end with a story. In Tavshin Samech Gimel, there's a famous bus bombing. I'm sure for those who are here are familiar with the number two bus. A tremendous amount of very Kedoshim Elyonim that were niftar. I think almost 20 people died, or 15 maybe. I'm not sure exactly the number. A lot of people, and there was people going to the Kotel, and a lot of them were known as being very special people. There were very special people that were there. And it was one of the most tragic, I mean, everything is tragic. At that time, we had a lot of bus bombings. For those who remember, it was 15 years ago. But at the same time, it was a lot of very chashuv people. Anyways, Al Kapadim over there, what happened was, he brings a true story about a girl named Chava Rechnitzer. Maybe some people know her. She was a little famous. That they weren't sitting Shiva. They already finished the Shiva. It was a few months past. But someone came to visit them from Antwerp. So Chava Rechnitzer was someone who was killed on the bus. She was a teenage girl or whatever it was, and she was killed on the bus. Anyways, so she was on the someone from Antwerp, from Europe, came to visit the family. Okay, came to visit the family. Never met them, never knew each other. I don't know who you were. And they said, "Are you the Rechnitzer family?" Because they've been searching for them a lot. So they said, "Yes, we're the Rechnitzer family." They were hunting them down, trying to find them. Back then, I don't know how accessible it was through internet access. But till they were able to find it, took a lot of things. They said, "Oh yes, we're Rechnitzer." They said, they came in and they said, "I wanted to tell you, you have a drishat shalom from your daughter. You have a shalom aleichem from your daughter, the one that was on the bus that was killed." They said, "What? In heaven's name, what are you talking about? That's not a funny joke, right? We don't make practical jokes like that." So they said, "No." So the mother said, "About a few months ago, I had a daughter that was niftar. She was a tinok, a baby, a 1.5 or something like that. And she was niftar, and it was hard. We had the shiva, we managed, and this. There was one night I could not sleep the whole night. She was in tears. She was just turning back and forth. She just couldn't swallow it. It had a very difficult night until she finally dozed off. She dozed off, and she had a dream. And when she dozed off, she had a dream that a girl comes up to her, a teenage girl comes up to her, and she said, "I want to tell you that your daughter is next to us. I know where your daughter is, and she's okay." She goes, "What's your name? I want to know your name. What's your name?" She says, "My name is Chava Rechnitzer. And I was on the bus." I forgot to mention, the beginning of the dream, this woman who was from Antwerp, part of the dream was she felt she was on the bus. She didn't know about it. She was on a bus, and she saw blood, and she saw explosives, and she saw pieces of avarim of people, of limbs of people flying everywhere. And then suddenly she saw this Chava Rechnitzer come up to her and tell her, "You should know, I have your daughter, and she's okay. She's in safe hand, and she's very happy." She said, I understand you're telling me, she said, okay, your name's Kavod, whatever, but I understand you're happy, but what about us? Right? The parents are not so happy. She said, yes, and that is painful for us to see. It's not such a good experience for us to understand that. But I want you to go and know that we are in good hands and everyone is okay. And the parents should know also, even though it's not so easy for you, it's a yisurim that you need to go through, but you should know that we are in a good place. So this lady went to, still she hunted her down. She lives in Antwerp. She had to find a rechnitzer somewhere in Eretz Israel, somewhere in Yerushalayim. She had to hunt her down until she was able to find her. And when she saw her, she said, she never met the person. She wanted to see a picture of Rabbi. And she said she wanted to see the picture immediately. They flipped her through a bunch of family pictures. They went through picture until they got to a certain picture. They said, oh, that's the girl I saw. And that was her. She was able to discern who the girl was from the thing. They saw a picture of her a couple years ago, of a picture of her, and she was able to discern through all the pictures of that she saw, and she was able to see who it was. She remembered her from the dream exactly what she looked like. And the family said that was a tremendous nechama for us to be able to hear such a thing. Stam, they were a very big giborim. It was Oberstein writes that it was incredible what giborim they were through the whole Mitzva. They were in Amunah and Bitachon. They were a very special family. Obviously, that's why they deserve this. But Al Kapanim, we see from here that everyone has a ticket and there's a reason why, and the Gilgulim, sometimes it's good to know because there's a reason behind everything. Okay, we'll stop here. Zot Hashem, I'll speak about